We are talking this morning with Kevin Murphy, President of the Berks County Community Foundation. Kevin, good morning. Thanks for the time.
Hi, Dan.
Let's talk about, you testified recently before Congress. That was on tax reform and the possible modification or elimination of charitable contributions. How'd that testimony go?
Well, I think it went well. Pretty much the whole Ways and Means Committee was there. They were definitely paying attention. We heard a lot from them after the hearing that they got the message loud and clear from the charitable sector that diminishing the tax incentives would affect charitable giving. So I'm optimistic, though. This is a long, big battle on tax reform, and there are a lot of powerful players in the mix.
What's the argument on the other side? Why would you get rid of the charitable contribution?
Well, there's a little bit of everybody needs to give something argument. The Washington Post editorialized that the majority of people who benefited from the charitable deduction were wealthy people, which is, you know, sort of a preposterous conclusion you could only get to if you worked in the Beltway, I think. You know, fundamentally, there's a feeling of a need to generate additional revenues for the federal government, and that the deductions that exist in the tax code are an opportunity to do that.
And the argument that you folks are making is?
Look, the charitable deduction sits alone in our country. It's the only deduction in the tax code that doesn't benefit the taxpayer. The beneficiary of that, as we pointed out in the testimony, are people who receive services from charitable organizations in communities all across our country. It's staggering to me that anybody would think about diminishing this system when we get asked to go visit other countries to talk about how we've created these incentives for charitable giving. I've been to Russia, going to Australia, New Zealand, and Singapore in April, all to talk to governments about how to create these incentives. We're the envy of the world with this system, and it's unimaginable that economists in Washington could think that this was a good thing to tinker with.
How much money potentially might the federal government save if they ended the charitable contribution deduction?
Well, if they ended it altogether, I think the estimates are in the neighborhood of about $39 billion if you were to end the deduction altogether. I mean, that's a substantial amount of money, but it seems to me there are many better ways to raise taxes.
That was my next question. If you keep that in the tax code, and if you keep the charitable deduction, do you propose an alternative way to make up that revenue? Well,
first of all, I mean, the simplest way is to simply raise rates. I mean, it's a 6 of one, half a dozen of the other equation. The idea of limiting the deductions is largely just to avoid having to make the sort of politically hard choice to adjust the rates. But there are a lot of deductions in the code that don't advance kind of a legitimate societal purpose that exists to benefit, you know, some narrow group or even a large group, but it provide an individual economic benefit,
right,
as opposed to one that benefits the whole nation.
Do you are you going to be keeping updated, or do you intend to make any more visits to Washington, or?
Oh yeah, I'm going back to Washington next week. This is not a battle that's over. There is real movement towards tax reform, at least out of the House, and I don't think that the charitable deduction will be safe till the president signs that bill.
Do you have a date in your calendar that you kind of circled as this is going to be like decision day for this, or?
If I did that, I'd be making a whole lot of money as a Washington lobbyist. I mean, I think that the picture down in Washington has never been muddier in terms of what can and will be accomplished. So I don't have a time frame. I'm pretty clear this is a critical year, though.
Let's talk about what's happening locally. You were involved, I think, in putting together the community health assessment survey data. And what's your sense of what the top 2 or 3 community needs are right now in Berks County.
I think we still have work to do in the community on making sure that there's good access to primary health care for residents of the community. The opening of the Berks Community Health Center is a huge step forward in that, and isn't reflected, the results of that aren't reflected in any of the numbers that were in that study because of the time lag. So that's an issue. I think there's a big issue about health education. I mean, it was clear that residents of Berks County didn't necessarily have good information about healthcare and particularly healthy eating, and you guys kind of amplified that in a series in the paper. And I think the big issue we're going to have to deal with in the community is how do we do community health planning? In the absence of a county health department, which like most Pennsylvania counties we don't have, how do we come together as a community and think about health outcomes and how we collectively work on them? We just don't have the structure for that. And I think that a county health department at some point for Berks County is going to be something we really need to address.
Has that conversation started anywhere of establishing a county health department? Because I know from my time in York that they were having serious discussions there.
There are a number of counties around Pennsylvania that are in some process of having discussions about this. It's a fairly hard thing to do. In 2008, we commissioned a study on the viability of one, but 2008 was not a great time for the county commissioners to think about doing new things in county government. So I think that the group that sort of served as the steering committee for the health assessment will come together to begin to talk about how to address these priorities, and I'm sure that will be one of them.
You, about a year or so ago, opened the door on a new business incubator. How's that going?
It's going very well. I think right now there are 5 or 6 businesses up there. This is a great partnership with Kutztown University Small Business Development Center. I think one of the pleasant surprises for us is how much interest there is in starting new businesses. When we started the incubator, we also, Kutztown also said they were going to start offering sort of how to start a business classes in the building. We thought, well, that happen every now and then, but it's almost constant, and the building is almost constantly full of people. Now, a lot of those people end up not starting businesses, right, but that's a great service too, to help people figure out they're not ready, right, to start a business. And so I think it's going to take us 4 or 5 years till we really see the effects of the incubator, till we really see companies ready to move out and expand and add a number of people. But there are some exciting entrepreneurs up there. They're a lot of fun and there's great energy.
Have any of the ones that started out, have they graduated and moved on?
Not yet, but we wouldn't have expected them to. It's too new. Yeah.
Kevin, we'll let that be the last word.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.